Yo, what's going on, guys? So in today's video, we're going to be simplifying the difference between duality and non-duality in spirituality. Okay? And duality and non-duality are just two different levels of understanding when it comes to our relationship with God. As two different levels of intimacy between oneself and God. Okay? So there are two different kinds of relationships between oneself and God. Okay? And we can consider that duality is the bottom, non-duality is the top. We start at the bottom and we work our way up to the top. All right. Now, starting with duality, we'll use a simplified analogy to understand duality, and then we'll go into non-duality, and we'll find another simplified analogy to understand non-duality and see the difference between the two. So starting with duality, we're going to use the analogy of a potter and a pot. Okay? The potter is God. The pot is man. Okay? In this analogy, the potter makes the pot comes from the potter, but the pot is not the potter. God creates man in his own image. Man comes from God, but man is not God. Okay? Duality, therefore, means individuality between oneself and God. Individuality in the sense that you exist as your own individual being, I exist as my own individual being, and God exists as God's own individual being. And therefore, we exist as three different beings other than each other. Therefore, duality is individuality. Okay? Now, in that regard, through that individuality, you are not me, I am not you, and we are not God. Man is not God. Okay? And this is the average relationship that the average person has with God. They have a dualistic relationship with God, where they have only ever and can only ever exist as something other than God. And it would be crazy to consider that they are God. But what if it's not so crazy? What if it is not only possible, but the truth that we are God? And that's all we've ever been. And we never knew it. And that's where we step into non-duality. And this is where things get a little tricky. But this is where things get interesting. Because now we can step into the analogy of a dream. The analogy of the dreamer and the dream. And we'll start off at the individual level, and then we'll take a step up to the universal level. At the individual level, we're starting with you and I. Then at the universal level, we're scaling this up to God and applying it to God, right? So now with non-duality. Using the analogy of the dream, you have the dreamer and the dream. So when you're dreaming at night, you are the dreamer dreaming the dream, right? When you're dreaming at night, you are the dreamer dreaming the dream. The dream comes from you, the dreamer, but here in this case, The question is, does the dream exist as anything other than you? Does the dream exist as anything other than the dreamer? And the answer is no. Because where does the dream go when you wake up? The dream goes away. Because what was the dream? Who was the dream? The dreamer. The dream never existed as anything other than the dreamer, because while you were dreaming, nothing existed but the dreamer. There is only the dreamer. And when you wake up, that's why the dream goes away. Because the dream never really existed as anything but the dreamer. So while you're dreaming, although there is an entire universe that appears to be something other than oneself as the dream is nothing other than oneself as oneself, because there is only the dreamer. Now, if we scale this up to the universal level, and let's visualize for a second. Let's think. What if in this waking state, you're still dreaming? What if in this waking state, the universe is the dream of life in the mind of God? What does that mean? Who are you? You're not just someone or something in God's dream. You are the dreamer. If the universe is the dream of life in the mind of God, God is the mind as oneself, the dreamer. It's the same thing here, just scaled up. You have you as the dreamer and the universe as the dream. Okay? The dreamer dreams the dream comes from the dreamer, but really, the dream is nothing but the dreamer, because there is only oneself as the dreamer. And in a sense, there is no such thing as the dream. There is only oneself as the dreamer, dreaming the dream as the universe, which feels like a bunch of things other than oneself. But really, the universe is nothing other than oneself as oneself, appearing to be many things other than oneself. All right? So in this regard, at the universal level, we have God and man as the universe, right? God is the dreamer. Man as the universe is the dream of life. God dreams the dream of life. The dream of life comes from God. But the dream of life is nothing but God, because there is only God as oneself. Nothing exists other than God, because there is no such thing as anything other than oneself. There is no such thing as other. Other is the illusion of duality, which is individuality, which is typically called separation in spirituality. So now here, there is no individuality when it comes to being. There is no individuality between you, me, or God. It's no longer that you are your own individual being and I'm my own individual being and God's own individual being. We're not three different beings other than each other. We are one same being as oneself. Your being is my being as God's being, because there is only one being as God, as oneself. There is only one self as oneself. There is only one being as God. You are me. I am you. We are God, because there is only God. If the universe is the dream of life in the mind of God, God is everywhere, everyone, and everything. Everything is an emanation of God. Everyone is an incarnation of God, because the universe is a manifestation of God as a manifestation of the mind, right? A materialization of oneself, okay? Therefore, there is only God. There is only oneself, because there's no such thing as other. So, God cannot exist as anything other than oneself, because there is no such thing as other. There is only God as oneself. There is only oneself as God. Okay, this is non-duality, which is unity with God in being, through the recognition that there is only one being as oneself, because there is only one self as God. Okay? So, another analogy we can use is the analogy of the ocean to understand non-duality. Let's imagine God is the ocean of life. The universe, as the Big Bang and the Big Crunch, is a wave of the ocean that rises and falls. When a wave rises and falls, does the wave exist as anything other than the ocean? No. The wave is just the ocean because there is only the ocean. There really is no such thing as the wave, right? Through our brain and our thoughts, when we look at the ocean, we can distinguish waves, but really, waves are just the ocean. Okay? And there's only one ocean that rises and falls as every wave. And although the wave rises and falls, the ocean does not appear and disappear. And what this means is that God as oneself is the immortal being in a mortal body, and that is eternal life. Immortality within mortality. The ocean beyond the wave. The wave rises and falls. The body is born and dies in mortality. But the ocean of life does not appear and disappear beyond the rising and falling of the wave, the birth and death of the body, right? The birth and death of form. Therefore, in the same way, when the wave rises and falls, the ocean does not appear and disappear. Who you are as life is eternal beyond how you appear, which is the birth and death of form. Life is who you are, form is how you appear. The ocean and the wave. The wave rises and falls, the ocean does not appear and disappear. Form is born and dies. Life is eternal beyond birth and death, which is oneself as the immortal being in a mortal body, and that is eternal life as God. There's only one immortal being in every mortal body. There's only one eternal life in every fatal form. Right? There's only one immortal being. There's only one eternal life as oneself. Although we are all different forms of life, we're all the same life in different forms. Although we're all different bodies, we're all the same being in different bodies. And that immortal being is eternal life as oneself, God. Okay? This is non-duality. Unity with God, to become one with God in being in the context that there is only one being as God. That being is oneself, because there is only one self as eternal life. Okay? And just for extra credit, we'll use one more analogy, using the analogy of a mirror. The mind of God is the mirror of life. The universe as the dream of life, and the mind of God is God's reflection. So you have God as the creator, the mirror of life, and man as creation, the reflection, the universe. In the same way that you are not your reflection, but your reflection is you. God is not the universe, but the universe is God. God is not man, but man is God. Because if man as the universe is God's reflection, then nothing exists other than God. Because there's only God staring in the mirror. And therefore, even if we are to consider ourselves God's reflection, we're still nothing other than God. Only God appearing to be someone or something other than himself, as an object to himself, which is the body. Okay, the mind is the space that the body is in. Okay? So, yes, the mind is the space inside of the body as the brain, but also the space outside of the body as the universe. So the mind is the space inside of the body, but also the mind is the space outside of the body that the body is inside of. So just as much as the mind is inside of the body as the brain, more fundamentally, the body is inside of the mind as the universe, because space is both inner and outer. Just like a cup in the ocean. Sure, there may be water inside of the cup, but really, there's a cup inside the water. Sure, at one level, the mind is inside of the body, but in the bigger picture, the body is inside of the mind. The universe is inside of the mind as the dream of life and the mind of God. Okay, so the universe as creation is your reflection. You are God as the mind, the mirror of life. Okay? The entire universe is you appearing to be something other than yourself as an object to yourself. The body is what's providing the mind with a sense of self, a feeling of individuality. Everything in reference to the body, everything in reference to form as the brain-body complex provides the mind with the illusion of being somebody, providing a sense of individuality. And everything outside of the body is experienced as other than oneself, which is the illusion of duality. Self and other. Man and God, which is false. Self is other. God is man, or man is God. Right? Because there is only one self as God, appearing as man, along with the rest of the universe, and man as form, the brain-body complex, providing the mind with a sense of individuality is creating the illusion of the rest of the universe being something other than oneself, when really The entire universe is one's reflection as oneself appearing to be something other than oneself as an object to oneself, like staring in the mirror and looking at your face. When you're looking at your reflection, in that moment, your reflection is you appearing to be something other than yourself as an object to yourself. But really, it's nothing other than yourself as yourself. Your reflection is both not yourself and just yourself, because there is only yourself. The universe is the mind of God as the mirror of life. The entire universe is your reflection, as staring in the mirror. You appearing as an object to yourself, appearing to be something other than yourself. The universe is both not yourself and just yourself, because there is only oneself. The universe is not oneself and just oneself, because there is only oneself. And this is union with God. Unity with all life. Singularity. Okay? And so that's why it gets, at that level, it gets trippy. To see the reality of what's going on here, that in a sense you're still dreaming the dream of life as the universe in this waking state, because you're still the source of life as the mind of God, from which the universe appears and disappears in the Big Bang and Big Crunch. Right? All of this is just you. It's all in your mind. Okay? Which is called idealism. The understanding that there is only the mind. There is no such thing as matter. The mind is the universe as the space in which all objects are contained, which is oneself as the subject, which therefore makes objects thoughts in the mind. So it's your brain, body, phone, headphones, chair, table, house, and the rest of the entire universe as the object of your experience. It's all a thought in your mind as a vision. Everything is your thoughts that look like material objects. All of the immaterial objects inside of the brain and the material objects outside of the body are thoughts inside of the mind as the space in which all objects are contained, which is oneself as the subject. The subject means the creator as the dreamer, where creation is the object of our experience as the dream of life. All right. So the subject is oneself as the creator, the dreamer. The object of our experience as creation is the dream of life. Okay? A better way to understand what the subject means versus an object. The subject is the knower. An object is anything known. Okay? So, the point where you know things from, when you know that, you know yourself. And so it sounds silly, but as the knower, you are actually space, which knows the brain, knows the body, and all of the other objects. Space itself is oneself as the subject, the knower of the brain, of the body, and the rest of all these other objects that are known to oneself as the knower. Okay? But the knower is the one and only thing that is immaterial as oneself, that knows everything else that appears to be other than oneself as an object to oneself, which even comes down to the body and the brain. The only thing that oneself really can say one is space as life itself, which means life is who you are, and form as this brain-body complex is how you appear, which is the Christ on the cross, okay? So that was kind of the Spirit speaking through me towards the end there. But I think that's where we can stop for today, because that simplifies the difference between duality and non-duality, and even gives some extra credit there. So I'm really excited with how this video came out. This came out really good. I think that this will help a lot of people to understand this stuff isn't nearly as difficult as it may seem. Okay, and the truth of who we are and what this is very important. And it's much deeper, but a lot simpler than you'd think. All right? It's important to know these things. So thank you guys for listening. I hope that this helps. And as I'm inspired with different ideas to talk about, I'll post them as they come. So I'll be back with whatever's next.